This is Studio 809.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I'm your host, Hiking Bob Falcone, and you can find me on my website at hikingbob.com with links to my social media, my columns at the Pikes Peak Bulletin, the other podcasts we've done, my photography website, and you can also email me there or sign up for my newsletter, all of that at hikingbob.com. Today my guest is Chris Gonazales from the Teller Trails team up in Woodland Park, and we take a hike during this podcast and talk about some of the stuff they're doing up there, including the upcoming Avenger Open Space that has been acquired by the city and that they're working fast on. So as we start this podcast, we're on the trail, and enjoy. Talk to you later. Well, I'm out here with Chris Gonazales. He is the executive director of the Teller Trails team, a relatively new group in Woodland Park, and they're doing a lot of trail work up here. We're going to talk a lot about that. But right now we're hiking. You can tell we're out here actually on the trail, which I love doing, and we're in the Avenger Open Space. And it's a piece that I guess can be best described as still in progress. Would that be a good way to describe it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us about this open space. What makes it so special, and where are you at in the process of getting this completely developed out as an open space?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Bob said, we're up here in Woodland Park, and we're on the Avenger Open Space. And anytime people hear the name, they're like, why would you name it after superheroes? However, what it's actually named after is the historic Avenger mining claim, which is what this property's history is. So this is 120 acres. It runs through the middle of a section of national forest. And if you're driving up the pass into Woodland Park, right before you get into town, if you look up to your right, you'll see a mining scar, pretty small, but a nice red and white mining scar up on your right. And that's smack dab in the middle of this open space. And so because this is a historic mining claim, it's really a unique parcel because it's long and narrow, which is not what you usually think of when you think of an open space. And so it actually runs between Teller County and El Paso County. So we go through both counties, which a lot of people don't realize, including people that live here, because our county border is pretty close. But it's such a unique property because it does bisect this local national forest. And so when it came up for sale, we at Teller Trail Team realized if this goes away, because historically it's been open to the public, the owners have been very cordial to allow people to hike on it, and therefore access the surrounding national forest. But if it were to sell, not only would we lose access to the trails on property, but also lose access to the wonderful places in the forest you can wander all around this parcel. And so it was really a linchpin property for us to realize not only are we saving that 120 acres, but we're protecting access to the surrounding national forest as well.
Cool. So while we're out here, you said that the land is privately owned. I've come up here years ago, never kind of realized the property ownership. Like you said, it passes from federal to private, from one county to another. It's kind of a mishmash of things. The landowner, you said, has been very nice about it. Allowed people hiking up here. I never even saw any signs. I said, don't be up here or anything like that. So people have been using it for years. But it's that private landowner who's interested in selling it. So he's either going to sell it to the government, Woodland Park, or Teller County, or you guys, or to whoever else came along. Is that right?
That's right. So last year it went up for sale, and the first sign was a couple private property signs popped up, and a lot of folks who'd been hiking this for 20, 30 years had no idea that this was actually private property. Right. They thought it was an old abandoned mine claim, which mine claims nowadays are typically leases, but because this is so old, it was transferred as real property through BLM. Oh. And so it was actually owned by a private individual. And so when that sign popped up, that was our go time, essentially, of, okay, if it's going for sale, like if they're starting to do that, that's probably going to be the next step. And sure enough, within a few days, it was up on Zillow and everywhere for sale. And so that's when we leaped into action and made the plan and proposal to the city of Woodland Park to say, look, you just did a Parks and Rec master plan that said 83% of your community wants better access to trails and better access to national forests.
Much like most towns in Colorado.
Exactly.
People want that kind of stuff, right?
100%.
Right.
And so we were able to approach council and say, look, this is an opportunity for essentially a turnkey trail system, because there's already trails on it. People have already used it. We went ahead and surveyed the community right out of the gate, and we had people saying everything from I got engaged here to I buried my pet's ashes here, which I don't necessarily recommend doing, but people are very passionate about this property.
It shows involvement. They've been
exactly.
out here. They have an attachment to it, right?
And so there was really the desire to see it protected and preserved. So we kind of laid out the steps for the city to say, hey, here's how you can apply for grant funding to purchase it. Here's how you can preserve it through a land trust. And here's how it can be protected forever, and give your constituents exactly what they want pretty quickly right after that master plan. And after some back and forth, we actually ended up with unanimous council support for this decision, which, if you know anything about Woodland Park politics, that's saying a lot to get unanimous support.
It's not always that way. You're right.
Exactly. So long story short, long story medium, ended up applying for a GOCO grant, Greater Rose, Colorado, which funded the majority of it. The city put in about $150,000, and we raised a little over $90,000 from community members, all to go toward the purchase and preservation of this land. So the city officially owns Avenger Open Space now. That's a done deal. Now the process is working on the conservation easement with Palmer Land Conservancy. And they're a wonderful group. I'm sure many of your listeners are very familiar with them. And so working closely with them, the trail teams help in the city really kind of lay out those building envelopes, because since it is protected in perpetuity, forever is a long time to plan for. So looking at, okay, what do we want to potentially be allowed here? What do we want to include in the options? And just because it's an option doesn't mean you have to do it. It just means it's an option to kind of plan for some of the unforeseen things in 50, 100 years from now, just like there's all the interesting challenges with e-bikes right now, based on how some of those conservation easements are written, because nobody knew that we'd have e-bikes now.
Sure. Yeah. Forever's a long time, and perpetuity's a long time. And there was recently an article in the Colorado Sun of a landowner with an in perpetuity conservation easement that now he says is unworkable. So now they're trying to figure out how to go back and change that. And obviously, as you well know, that is a complex and not necessarily A, easy and B, doable thing to change those. So we've come to the point now where you really have to try to have as much foresight as possible in case those things need to be amended. So, and Palmer Land Conservancy is a great group to work with to get that kind of stuff done.
Absolutely. Yeah, they've been wonderful to work with. And from day one, just being able to make those introductions for the city and say, hey, here's the playbook. Like, if you run this, it's going to be okay. Because the city just has never done an intentional land purchase like this before. It's really a new era for them. There are some open spaces, but most of them were just deeded from a land developer, and they just kind of sit off to the side, and they're beautiful and green, but there's no trails and not intentional design or anything like that. So this is going to be a brand new foray for them. So at Teller Trail Team, we're really helping them with everything from the planning and mapping of it all the way to, you need trail specifications now in your code. Like, that's something that you have to have on the books, and we have to be able to plan for that accordingly. Right. So helping them write and design all those, because they just don't have the staff or the experience to do that right now. So we're very excited to be able to fill that gap for them.
So help us understand things. If the city owns the property, they bought it outright, why do they need a conservation easement? Can't they, since they own it, can't they just do whatever, make all those arrangements and plans and things that they want? Why is a conservation easement important? Yeah,
that's a great question. So the conservation easement is there as a condition for GOCO grants.
Okay.
So as part of that funding, as the grant that they got, it has to be put in a conservation easement, because of course GOCO doesn't want to see it turned into a wastewater plant in 10 years.
Gotcha.
They want to make sure that it stays for the original intent. So that's where the conservation easement and a land trust comes into play. And so for us, we obviously are very excited about that, because we don't want to see it paved over for a parking lot, and it wouldn't make a particularly good parking lot anyway. But to be able to have it protected in perpetuity, that is a condition from GOCO.
So GOCO's putting in a bunch of their lottery money that they spend all over the state for buying land and improvements. They don't want it to just end up being a commercial development at some point. So they have you, even if you own it, they want that put into the conditions of the development and the purchase and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And so GOCO does a reimbursement grant, and so they'll cut the check to the city once the conservation easement is finalized.
You buy it, we'll pay you back later.
Exactly. Yeah.
And GOCO. I mean, we're going to laugh about that, but GOCO actually is a great group and does the money they spend around Colorado for open spaces, and a lot of people may not realize this if they're not originally from Colorado, but when the Colorado lottery was created by voter approval, one of the things was the proceeds had to go to open space and parks and trails and playgrounds and that kind of stuff. So that's why all that money is funneled into a project just like this. It was a condition that was put in by the voters. That probably the only way that the lottery was going to get approved in Colorado, and that made it happen. And now it's tens of millions of dollars or even more per year that gets spent. It's
incredible the amount of work they do. I challenge anyone, next time you go to your favorite park or playground or open space, check the sign and you'll probably see GOCO's logo on there, because they're just so heavily involved and make projects like this possible.
Right, absolutely. Let's keep going down here. I know that if I remember correctly, that mine thing is just down this trail here, is it?
Yeah, it is. So we'll go down here, we'll cut through a couple side hills, and then end up there.
Cool. So, Chris, we've hiked back about a mile on the Avenger. I guess that was the Avenger Trail. It may have been a couple of different trails. That was the Avenger Trail. And we're at this kind of like a plateau where it looked like there may have been some mining and some quarrying done here. We're high above Highway 24. You can probably hear that in the background. Reason why it's audible is right now it's a very overcast day. There's a cloud deck, and I think it's just keeping the sound in, but you can hear Highway 24. But the nice thing is you have to really stretch your neck to see it, so the view shed's pretty good. So tell us about this piece of land, what you know about this spot here where we're at, where this trail kind of ends here.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's still a little bit of information that we're hashing out and talking to local historians and whatnot. But one of the things we do know is this area was quarried actually for fill for US 24. And so to help build the road that we've all driven on so many times, a lot of that fill came from here. And it's a nice little shuttle down the hill. And if you look at the roads, the remnants of the roads to get down there, I wonder who had the bright idea to drive at that grade with a truck full of gravel. But I'm glad someone did, you know?
I hope they had good brakes on their trucks.
Absolutely. We've also seen a lot of exploratory pits around here, presumably for gold and other things like that. But we're still working with an archaeologist and a historian to kind of find out some of those finer details. But this is the spot we're standing in is the spot I mentioned earlier, that if you're driving up US 24 on your way into Woodland Park, you look up on the right and you'll see right where it is.
Right.
And it's got amazing views of Pikes Peak when it's not as overcast as today.
Yeah.
But also just some of the rolling foothills and whatnot. It's just a beautiful location.
And as a side note to people, if you come up here, always be aware of mine shafts that may be out there. I know the state's trying to shut those down and get them sealed up, but I get the feeling there's a lot of them they may just not know about.
Yeah.
And they may be up here. So if you're up here and you're exploring and there's a depression in the ground, you probably want to stay back from that. Let's talk a little bit about Teller Trails team, the team that you head up and you founded. How did you guys get started? How long ago did you get started? What was it that made you say that we need to help the city of Woodland Park and our neighbors develop more open spaces?
Yeah, so a handful of years ago, do you remember the Pancake Rocks debacle where they shut down that 15 feet or so of trail? And
I wrote a lot about it in my articles,
Yeah, so go back and read Bob's articles, of course. But that was an eye-opener for me, because when I saw that, you know, I'd hiked that dozens of times and never knew it went through any private property. So that piqued my curiosity to say, well, what else in our area up here in Teller County cuts through private property or could be in danger of being shut down like this? And I was shocked how many trails actually do end up cutting through private property in this area, because for the longest time, you know, we have a lot of social trails, we have a lot of even system trails that cut through private that end up really spitting you out in locations that you don't know that you're going to be in until you're there.
Right.
And so when I realized that there was blood in the water, if you will, with the Pancake Rocks issue, I realized, okay, we need to start having conversations about some of these other locations, and even just philosophically, what do you do when the trail that you've always used runs through your friend's ranch, so it's fine that you're on it, quote unquote. But now you have apps like All Trails telling people to drive from cities and cities away to come hike this trail that goes through private property. Well, that private property owner, I believe, has every single right to shut down access if they want to, because that's the definition of private property.
Sure.
And so I started thinking, well, how can we get ahead of some of these, looking at easements, looking at reroutes, looking at ways to partner with our private landowners to both protect them and also protect public access where possible. And so that really started my wheels turning. And my first step was, well, let me just volunteer with our local Teller County group. So I started looking around and, well, I couldn't find one, unfortunately. And so I thought, well, someone will come along. And so if I'm honest, I sat on my hands for about a year thinking someone would come along. Then I realized, oh, I'm the guy that came along. Yeah, so I guess I should start doing this. And so that's when I started, reaching out to community members that I knew had a lot of expertise in this realm, because I told people from day one, I'm not an expert on this, but I can assemble a team and I can organize people and I can rally people. I can absolutely do that. And so that's what started happening, on my board of directors. I have a guy who has, over, I think, 40 million in grant writing experience. He used to work for City of Colorado Springs. He helped fund Manitou Incline with his grant writing process. We've got a guy who has been in oil and gas pipelining for decades. And so he really understands the NEPA process, the environmental studies, all the things that need to go in on that side of things. We've got local business owners with gear shops, all that sort of stuff. So really assembled a good team, all the way to the boots on the ground folks who have been cutting and designing trails for 30, 40 years. And it's really been an amazing opportunity to rally these individuals who have a passion for these things, but just like me, didn't have a place to express that.
Gotcha.
And so we saw that need and started kind of laying the infrastructure, putting together our 501c3 nonprofit organization, meeting all the people we needed to know, and all of that. And really what jump-started it, my first call was to Trail and Open Space Coalition. I didn't know them. I was cold calling out of nowhere and just said, hey, look, this is what I want to do. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Is there any way you would give me a peek behind the curtain? And Susan Davies was incredible. She said, absolutely, here's our playbook. If you have any questions, ask. We're here to help. And same thing when I reached out to Medicine Wheel Trail Advocates. Corey said the same thing. He said, look, if you have any questions, you need any tools, let us know. We can work together. And so I've just been blown away by the overall nonprofit culture, because at the end of the day, we're all on the same mission. We're all trying to do the same thing. And some of us are going to be able to wear certain hats and brand certain things and look out for certain interests a little bit more than others, but we can all work nicely together. And I've just been so thrilled over the past few years that that's really been my experience. It's been very collaborative.
So some outdoor recreation groups are geared towards advocacy, some are geared towards fundraising, some are geared more towards being boots on the ground and doing, swinging the shovels and, digging out the trail stuff.
Yeah.
Would you say your group is a combination of all of that?
We really are. We are all of the above. And so, like I mentioned earlier, we did all the behind-the-scenes advocacy and planning for spearheading the Avenger Open Space acquisition. Now we're transitioning into, okay, we're going to do the boots on the ground work. We're going to be able to be cutting trail. We're going to be improving trail. We're going to be doing signage, all stuff that we've actually been helping the Forest Service with up here for years, because again, Pancake Rocks, you rewind a little bit, I realized, Forest Service is understaffed and underfunded. Well, now that's very much more so the case, we'll put it that way. And so, we partner a lot with the folks up here, and I always say we do Teller County and surrounding areas. So we actually are doing Rampart Reservoir, the trail all the way around the reservoir. We're taking care of that, which will have a fun work day, which hopefully I get to pitch for you later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, that one, technically El Paso County. Functionally, we all know it's basically Teller County, because you have to come through here to get there. And so to be able to be broad enough where we can help out on those peripheries, we want to be able to do that. But to answer your question, yeah, we absolutely do everything from the back end, behind the scenes, bureaucratic work that honestly most people don't know needs to go into this, all the way to what I believe is the more fun thing, which is the swinging the shovels, moving the dirt, which, if I'm being honest, I thought that's what I was going to be doing when I started all this. I naively thought I was going to show up with a golden shovel and all the land managers would say, thank God you're here. Have at it.
Not so much, huh?
No, I thought it was going to be 10% paperwork, 90% moving dirt, and I had that completely backwards.
Right.
And I think that's something that I've really grown to appreciate now that I've been working behind the scenes for a few years, of realizing there's a lot that goes into these wild spaces that we all know and love, that we just take for granted as users oftentimes. There's so much that has to happen before a single rock can be moved, before a tree can be cut, and certainly before a new trail system can be designed. And so to get that understanding behind the scenes and to really start to show some of our community, hey, it can take a fight sometimes, but it's a fight worth fighting, and it's worth putting in the effort now so that future generations, and hopefully in our generation too, we see a lot of improvement. And so that's been a really eye-opening experience for me, and a steep learning curve, but a fun one.
There's an old joke that says there's a couple things the public should never see happen. One of which is sausage, one of which is laws, and I always throw in the other one is open space policy. The mess behind that sometimes, and the stuff you have to go through can be quite a bit in that realm. But good for you for coming from basically without a background in that and picking it up really quickly. I mean, you made quite the name for yourself, and PPORA made you the Volunteer of the Year.
Yeah, I won that award, which is really cool and an honor. And it is funny because I do sit on that board of directors. I obviously fully recused myself for all of that. But I did whisper in Becky's ear when I got the award. I was like, this feels a little like nepotism. And she's like, it's not. Because it was actually the community that was very generous in nominating me for that, and not the board. But I did think that was kind of funny. I was like, optics, this could be weird if people, don't know how this works. But that really was an honor, and it really has been. I just feel like I've been so blessed with the opportunities I've had, and just doors have been flinging open right and left. Like I said, I'm on the board for PPORA now. I'm on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board here in the city. And so I have my city hat, my county hat, and my regional hat that I'm all wearing now. And it's really just been a fun journey.
And the city being Woodland Park.
Yes, exactly, Woodland Park.
Exactly.
And so we've been partnering primarily with the city of Woodland Park and with the U.S. Forest Service for the past few years. And we're working on some projects expanding out with proposals for the actual county and some other land managers in the area. But you start where you start, and then you continue to grow.
Sure.
And opportunities are coming up. And so it's really been neat, and it has happened quickly. Our first big project was Avenger Open Space, and like we said, we got that GOCO grant, which from start to finish we did in 8 months.
Wow.
Which, if you know anything about a GOCO grant, that is
quick.
insane.
That's quick. Yeah.
And for reference, Manitou Incline, that was a 3 or 4 year process for them to get that grant.
That involved about 5 different agencies to get involved with. That's why and literally an act of Congress.
Yeah.
It literally, if you're not familiar with that, it literally did take an act of Congress, because one little piece of that was federal land, and it took an act of Congress for that to actually happen. And people are, that's always a joke. It takes an act of Congress. No, that one actually
did. It actually did.
It actually did.
Which speaks volumes to just all the folks that we have in the region working on projects like this.
Right. Excellent. Let's walk back down, because we're getting a little bit of road noise, even though we're hundreds of feet above Highway 24. But with the cloud cover, I think it's just keeping the sound in. This is not the only open space you guys are concerned with. We had talked a little bit about Mule Creek, which is a trail in the forest north of Woodland Park here on Highway 67. What are you guys doing out there in Mule Creek?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. For those who aren't familiar, it starts as a Forest Service system trail, so an official trail. Then it goes through Woodland Park property, and so that's an official trail. Then it spits you out into a non-system trail on Forest Service. Then it runs through a couple private properties. Then it's back on non-system trail. And then you will end up on system trail again. So it's quite the smorgasbord, if you will, however you even pronounce that word. But we're working right now with the Forest Service on their system side of things to improve some signage, some drainage, some washout area, really just clean it up, because it gets pretty heavily abused in the winter with natural weathering. And so building up the resilience of the trail so it becomes more sustainable is really our priority there right now.
Okay.
And then same thing on the city side of it is improving the quality of the trail, but also adding in consistent signage between the two different property managers, because people end up out there and then all of a sudden they have no idea where they are, because it does change hands so many times. And then we do have long-term goals of partnering with those private property owners, of seeing how we can get some long-term strategies for protecting access there, while also, of course, protecting our private property owners. Because just like I said with the Pancake Rocks issue, is I believe the private property owners have every right to do what they want with their private land.
Sure.
But also I want to find creative solutions for protecting public access as well, whether that be easements, whether it be reroutes, or whatever that looks like. It's going to be unique in each situation, but that's a lot of the stuff that we face up here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'd like to try to convince private property owners to allow access to their property whenever we can. And, sometimes it's an uphill battle, sometimes it's not. So, Chris, we've hiked back here a little ways. We're finally in a place that's a little quiet. We're not picking up so much road noise, even though 24 is a long ways down there. Just everything seems to be echoing today. You mentioned as we were kind of walking and we were chatting, and, we're up here somewhere, I'll trust you to tell me how to get out of here, that there are some specific challenges that a town like Woodland Park has, and that you're trying to work with them on while, you want to promote recreation, but there's other challenges. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of the interesting challenges we face up here is, at the end of the day, we as Woodland Park, but also as Teller County as a whole, we're a rural community. County-wide, we have 25,000 people. However, we're a short 30-minute drive from Colorado Springs, one of the largest metropolitan areas in the state, and on pace to outpopulate Denver by 2049 with 1 million folks, from what I've heard. Yeah. So we have the resources of a rural community, but we have the traffic of a large community. And so that puts us in an interesting position because, of course, we want people to be able to come up here and recreate, but 2020 in particular made it clear that our infrastructure just can't handle it. We're not set up for that. We don't have the staff, we don't have funding, we don't have any of that up here, really. And now with the Forest Service cuts, well, we have even less. And so because we are over 50% public land here in Teller County, we realized it's really important that we as a nonprofit find a way to partner with our land managers to help actually taking care of our infrastructure and also strategically planning for the future, because it is an interesting position to be in where you have heavy traffic but not heavy funding. And so that's one of our biggest challenges up here is just fundraising. We have a small pool of people to pull from, and so that's an interesting area that we're working as a nonprofit to improve, because it takes a lot of time. I'm putting in a whole lot of hours, and I'm the only staff member right now, and I've had a grand total of 1 paycheck this entire time. And it's a season where it's looking like we are going to need to do some more heavy lifting to really help the community take advantage of the momentum from Avenger Open Space and really help springboard not only the city but the county into a new era of providing better opportunities for the community, for our visitors, and also protecting our natural resources in that same process.
So let's take that a step further. You mentioned, finances, resources. How can people help you with that? How can they help you if they don't have, obviously financial help is always needed with any nonprofit.
Absolutely.
I'm well aware of that. But you may need other help, like somebody to move a shovel and somebody else with some expertise. How can somebody help you move your agenda and your work along?
Absolutely. So we definitely have dig days. We have fun days to get out and volunteer, get sweaty, meet new people, and really take care of the lands that we all love. And so you can find those all on our website, tellertrailteam.org. But our biggest one coming up, we're calling it our signature event of the season, is going to be up on Rampart. So we talked about how we're taking care of that trail. So it's going to be boats, barbecue, and trail work. So we'll be having boats to shuttle people around the reservoir, drop them off at strategic locations. So it'll be a fun, unique trail experience, because usually when you're working on trails, you don't get to sail on a boat. Right. But this time you will. And we'll end the day with a big barbecue out in the parking lot and just have a really good time there. And so that's coming up on August 2nd. And again, you can find all that information on the website. But really finding ways to get involved, whether it be with us, whether it be with another local nonprofit, to get out and get your hands dirty, I think is really important. And it makes you appreciate a lot of the things that you probably already appreciate if you're listening to this podcast, but it gives you a deeper appreciation and a deeper sense of connection with the wild lands that we have And like I said, it's also just a great time to meet other folks and expand your community of outdoor recreation enthusiasts.
And that's good that you have boats, because that's a long trail. It's what, 12 miles?
Yeah, it's 12 miles. So we're not going to make people haul tools 12 miles.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, because even if you go halfway, it's 6 out and 6 back. It's still
Exactly.
12 miles. So that's great that you guys thought of that, to bring boats out there, because you can pretty much beach almost anywhere along that. I was just out there hiking not too long ago and did a section of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can beach a boat almost anywhere and get off and get to work.
Yeah, we were actually out there the other day because before a race we had to do some of the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
So we rode the whole thing on bikes with chainsaws on our backs to go clear all the corridor of the major fall. But now this time we'll be doing more of the branches that have overgrown and, some of the brush. So it's going to be a lot of corridor clearing, a little bit of drainage work as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so definitely don't want to burn out volunteers right out of the gate. Instead, like I said, we're going to make it a big party. It's just going to be a lot of fun.
Sounds like a great time. Do you guys do work all year round, or are you like a lot of the other groups that you probably take the winter off, or what's your schedule for doing that stuff during the year?
Yeah, so we definitely take the winter off. We always encourage people, whether it's on or off season, when you're hiking, take a little trash bag with you, because there's always stuff that accidentally gets left behind. Unfortunately, sometimes things get intentionally left behind, but I like to try to give folks the benefit of the doubt. But, you can always be doing little bits and little pieces to care for the land and leave it better than you found it. And that's a concept that I've taught my kids. They're 5 and 8 now, and they know it better than most adults, is anytime you go somewhere, leave it a little better than you found it, because there's always opportunities to do that, whether it be stopping for 5 minutes to pick up some glass that's broken on the side of the trail that has been there for 50 years because it's not going anywhere if you don't pick it up. Or if you're feeling really brave, grab a couple of those dog poop bags and haul them out. But really, just there's little ways you can get involved. But as far as our core work, that's definitely seasonal, because the ground freezes, everything gets snowed over, and depending on which side of the hill you're on, it's going to be either thigh deep or it's going to be bone dry. That's just how it works in Colorado.
Yep, sure is. Chris, I think we've talked quite a bit about what the work you guys are doing here. It's been a tremendous amount of work for a short period of time with a new group of people, and probably dealing with and I'm not saying this in a disparaging way, but probably dealing with a number of government agencies that weren't used to up here, that weren't used to having a group like you around. There are other groups up here, obviously, and they do have volunteer work. You've done a lot of really great work up here. I'm excited by Avenger Open Space. Like I said, I've been here before, didn't know what it was, kind of like everybody else. I don't know,
like everyone else, yeah.
The trail that goes back there someplace, let's go hike it. And can't wait to see this become, now that the city has it more developed and everything. So, Chris, you kind of gave out your website, tellertrailteam.org. I got that right?
Yeah.
How else can people find you? What's social media? How can they email you? How can they get a hold if you have any questions, other than your website?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the website, you do have to go there first, but you can sign up for our newsletter. That's going to keep you up to date of what we're doing, boots on the ground, behind the scenes, work days, all that good stuff. We're also on social media, Instagram and Facebook primarily. And we also have a Facebook group called Teller Trail Conditions. So if you're interested in coming up here kind of in our mud season and you have no idea if you need spikes or rain boots, or you're good to go in your sneakers, feel free to jump on there, post and ask questions, and people will usually be pretty quick to respond and say, hey, this trail's great, this one's atrocious, whatever it is. Being able to really give you some up-to-date information based on what's going on, because like I said before, just depending on the side of the hill you're on, we all know it can be drastically different. Right. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, like I say, you could be here in Woodland Park, but you could be down several miles north of Highway on 67 and at Mule Creek and see completely different environment down there.
Absolutely. And you go around the backside of Pikes Peak to Cripple Creek area and you could get stuck in snow and you could show up with flip-flops. That's actually one of the things my search and rescue friends often say is people will go rent their Jeep when it's 60s and 70s in Colorado Springs and drive around the backside of Pikes Peak and get stuck in the snow in shorts and flip-flops.
Yep.
So, anytime you're recreating, as I'm sure you all know, make sure you're prepared, make sure you do your homework. Because we do have a great search and rescue team, but we don't want to overwork them,
They're volunteers, like every other search and rescue team in the state. They're all volunteers, so as much as they love doing it, they'd also like to spend some time at home and relaxing too. So, yeah, that's my latest thing is to tell people, do not make your hike a newsworthy event.
Absolutely.
Because the only ones that are newsworthy are the ones that go south. So just
100%. That's not the type of fame you want.
No, that's not how you want to make the news. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking me out here. We've got an airplane flying overhead now. If it wasn't one kind of traffic, it's another. But it's all been great. It's been wonderful coming out here. You and I have chatted a lot in the past because we attend a lot of the same meetings, and I'm glad we finally had a chance to come out and do this podcast, and for me to learn more about what you're doing and see this beautiful open space.
Yeah.
This is not yet on a lot of the mapping things. Do you know how soon that this might show up on some of the mapping apps and stuff like that?
That's a great question. It's all contingent upon when the conservation easement is finalized.
Okay.
And so we're hoping probably spring of next year it'll show up on the maps.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that.
But if they want to find out more about where this is, can they find out on your website, or can they contact you to find out where Avenger
feel free to
is?
reach out. If you just go on tellertrailteam.org, you'll find my email address there. Feel free to reach out. Happy to share. Because it is open to the public. We're just not actively promoting it to the public right now.
Gotcha. Okay. So there you go, folks. Teller Trail Team doing great work up here. Chris, who's leading that up and founded it because he found a need for it. And I'm so glad he did, because this is really a great place to be. And with that, everyone, we'll tell you thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.